This is Face the Nation, broadcasting live from the CNN IBN headquarters in New Delhi with Sagarika Ghosh.
Hi there. Is Indian traditional culture being increasingly devalued in our times? The Delhi International Arts Festival is going on at the moment in the capital and the audiences are big. But it's generally believed that the classical arts do not get big audiences, that they do not sell, and they're not given the kind of sponsors, media attention or advertising that a Bollywood event, for example, would get. Is our culture dominated as it is by Bollywood, thus killing the traditional arts? Let's first get you glimpses from the Delhi Arts Festival and then we'll get into our discussion.
People want to look out for something more than the idiot box or television thing, a scenario which is from films or other things. They're coming to see something which is real, which is good.
Elitism of classical art, people don't understand, we don't know the codes. So people who haven't been given that opportunity to understand are left out. So they look to popular art.
Dance shows, theatre all around. I really feel that Indian art is being devalued and such cultural shows are important to bring it up again.
And joining us tonight, we could not have asked for a more eminent panel. Shubha Mudgal, acclaimed singer, someone who is acclaimed in the field of Hindustani classical as well as in the pop music field. She's an icon of pop music as well as of classical music. Pratibha Prahlad, Bharatanatyam dancer, the driving force of the Delhi International Arts Festival. You call it your 5-year-old baby, in fact. Jatin Das, artist who needs no introduction, joining us. Sham Benegal, acclaimed filmmaker and MP now of the Rajya Sabha. Roshan Abbas, former TV host, former RJ and filmmaker. And the question we're asking, can the traditional arts compete against Bollywood given our Bollywood dominated cultural landscape at the moment? Let's start the discussion with Pratibha Prahlad. You've called the Delhi International Arts Festival your 5-year-old baby, and you were telling me that the crowds that are coming to the events are incredibly big. They're mammoth. At the same time, there simply isn't the kind of sponsorship, the kind of support that such a festival should get, because it's simply not conceived of that a classical arts event could get these kind of crowds.
It's kind of funny because Delhi Arts Festival is not about classical arts. It's about all forms of art, from the most traditional to classical to fusion to world music to contemporary to everything, to every genre of art, be it dance, music, theatre, be it visual arts, be it puppetry, be it everything. Now, having said that, because it's so multi-art and it's multi-venue, when we conceived it as a public-private partnership venture, I thought of it as getting ready support. You know, I think I was being a bit presumptuous, but yeah, I thought that people would come forward and, you know, and that India was ready for something like this, because the economic story of India is not complete without its cultural story.
Right.
Because India began with a cultural story. It never really began with an economic story. So how can an economic story now, you know, be dichotomous to a cultural story? But the very first year we got good sponsorship and good support, but I don't know, suddenly it was like, you know, we were facing opposition all along. And this year has been particularly hard trying to convince people to support Delhi International Arts Festival, because the corporate sponsorship is simply not there. It's simply not available.
It's simply not there in the way that it would be for a Bollywood event. Shubha Mudgal, I mean, you bring a Bollywood star or you bring someone from the Bombay film industry and the corporates would fall all over themselves, you know, trying to sponsor it. Are the traditional arts or the classical arts or the arts that are not associated with Bollywood being devalued, being destroyed slowly?
I think really the issue is not one of Bollywood versus traditional arts, but I think the issue is one of preserving diversity. I think one of the greatest things about Indian arts is the fact that it's so diverse. There are thousands of different kinds of art forms. I mean, every few kilometers you have new ways of singing and dancing and expressing yourself artistically. And therefore, I think the issue that is really needs attention is why we are becoming such a monoculture in some ways. Why is the only exposure, the only easy access that we get is to Bollywood? And I think we're very proud of the success of Bollywood. I'm certainly not going to sit here and start a diatribe against Bollywood. I think it's wonderful that people are enjoying it. Where I have a problem is why Bollywood is becoming the sole representative of Indian arts, when that's never going to be the case. There are just too many different people, too many different languages, etc., etc. I mean, for us to really forget that.
And is that happening because of the star system? Because the Bollywood, the Bollywood genre is started with the stars who command these huge endorsements, who have these huge PR campaigns. They're the big celebrities. Whereas the other arts, the classical arts, are not stars on the same level. I mean, you are a major star yourself, but there are very few like you in the classical arts genre.
I'm a little worried about answering this question because you might never call me back here again. But really speaking, for example, I think it's a complex issue. There are many reasons why this has happened. But one certainly is that classical arts do not and have never had the kind of audience. You don't expect a stadium full of people to be headbanging for a classical music or for a traditional music performance. And at the same time, audiences have increased. If you look at history, you will know that these are chamber arts, and a very few select sort of distinguished discerning audience would listen. Today you go out into a Nehru Park and sing, and there are thousands of people, and they're new listeners. I think the issue is that today, for example, on media, we sell space. Does a
very good point.
Do the traditional arts, I mean, do I have the kind of money or does Pratibha have it
to buy publicity?
Yeah,
Yes,
to buy publicity in the media. Let's put it to Jatin Das. Is the media responsible, Jatin Das, for the kind of neglect that the traditional arts, the diverse arts, the classical arts face?
I think you have been talking, all of you have been talking about classical art. What is really important is folk, tribal, classical and contemporary art. All of it should be a part of concern at home and in primary school level. Unless that is there, it's all floating in mid-air, number one. Number two, the television, and I dislike the word Bollywood. It's a copy from Hollywood. We have cinema. I grew up in Bombay, where there was an area for cinema, the films were made. Today, whole of Bombay has become a cinema city. Every newspaper and magazine is on politics and cinema and cricket. There was a time when Richard Bartholomew and others used to do reviews. If I had a painting exhibition, any artist had a painting exhibition, the review appeared the next morning. All the newspapers who were the Times.
So the sensibility is becoming coarsened. There's a coarsening of sensibility as well.
It is the people, all those who are very well-to-do, like Hindu cinema, the cinema world and others, who have dominated, and all the arts, as I said, folk, tribal, classical, contemporary. I remember Vasant Sathe was telling me when the television had color, he said, Jatin, there will be more things on painting. That's not true. Unfortunately, even newspapers and electronic and print media did lots when they were not very affluent.
Right, so
when
it's the affluence,
it's all become advertising,
right, so
and
it's
cinema.
the affluence and prosperity that is self-perpetuating, and the money-making machine is perpetuating a further money-making machine, which is riding on the stars.
Right.
Let's get in Shyam Benegal, who also, like Shubha Mudgal, bestrides both the worlds of classical as well as modern or pop. Are the traditional arts being neglected? Do you feel the classical music, for example, is to some extent dying?
Classical music has also to evolve according to the way we are living. You know, so it's not a question of saying, oh, we are losing all these wonderful people and these marvelous concerts where you could sing a rag for about 2.5 hours. Now that sort of thing, you know, is in many ways past. Now you cannot revive that, because you don't have an audience for that kind of revival. What you can do is to archive the best works so that it becomes a good reference point. But what you do need is to recognize that these things need to evolve. And younger people know this quite easily, you know, because today, for instance, a lot of the young composers, even who are doing things like rock and pop music, I know I'm going to be very unpopular when I say this, but the truth is that they're bringing in elements of classical traditions into their music, which is very interesting. You know, they've got a completely today's form into which all these elements start to come. I mean, you cannot say that Rahman is not using elements from the traditions of Indian music. He is.
Let me get you to respond to that. Your son is a singer in a rock band, isn't he? So
yes,
you're well placed to answer that.
Yeah, but to Shyam Babu, I'd like to ask, if people can watch a movie for 3 hours, why pray can they not listen to a rag for 1 hour or 1.5 hours? And I think film music has always been a hybrid entity which has borrowed much from classical, folk music, from all kinds, from jazz, blues, etc. So it's not just today that this is happening. I mean, I think from the time that film music in India became popular, I mean, and started out, I mean, it has always borrowed from different sources. So its hybridity is in fact its wonderful characteristic. So, but I don't think that the answer is in shortening things, you know. For example, singing a
But are classical artists like yourself too hung up on purity, that you don't want to adapt, that you don't want to reach out to new audiences? Is that, let me get a reaction in from Shyam Benegal. Do you think there is a purity issue here, that the classical exponents don't want to adapt?
You know what, if you're just stuck in a groove and you're not going to develop anything more than what you have already done or what you've learned. Now how do you go forward with that? You know, you're taking people into a museum. You can't do that. That whole thing has to evolve. Now if we say that Bharatanatyam is so, you know, it's one way or another, but look at the way it developed on its own. I'm not talking of now, say when the Nayaks of, this place, from the dynasty in Tanjore, when they developed it, where did they develop it from? You know, after all, most of these things developed only in the last 200 years. Before that, you did have, but we don't know what kind of forms they actually were.
See, as a performer, since Mr. Benegal mentioned Bharatanatyam, as a performer, I know that dance forms or music forms are constantly evolving. They're dynamic. They're not in a groove. Absolutely. They're not museum pieces. Okay, and as an artist myself, I know that every moment that I create, the moment perishes. It's over. And then you create fresh, and even if it's the same item I'm dancing again and again and again, the way I perform it is different from the last time. So I can never recreate what I did the last time. So having said that, yes, there is progress, there is progression. Each artist herself brings change into this whole movement of classicism. But but you do have to protect. But at some stage, you feel that you do have to protect the traditional arts, because otherwise you will lose the inheritance. As what are you saying? Talking about? Are you talking about form or content? I mean, why should you not raise the audience to the level of the art rather than dumb the art down to the level of the audience? Let's put that to Roshan Abbas. Roshan Abbas, how do you interact so much with young people? How, for example, will the traditional arts or the classical arts or the varied arts compete with the kind of marketing that Jatin Das is talking about, the kind of money-making industry of Bollywood that Jatin Das is alluding to? How can they compete? What can they do to compete?
We don't have to compete.
There are such seniors here present that I want to answer this as a event manager, because that's one part of my profile that So when we go and look for sponsorships, the sponsor is looking for an audience. Now the largest audience you end up getting is when something is picked up by mass media, by television, by radio, by print. And they are the ones who've created this mass consumption of saying, so who's the Bollywood act? I mean, if Shubha Mudgal is performing, who is there with her? Is X star there? I mean, these are the questions that are thrown to us over and over. The sponsor says, will I get a TRP of X? So, number one, that is one cruel cycle that everybody falls into. I also sometimes find that most discussions on art become about the art and the artist and not so much about the audience. And I think Sham Babu said that just now, and it's so true. And you know, the new audiences, you need to reach out to them. I actually tried to Google and look for the Delhi Arts Festival on Twitter, on Facebook. I did not find enough, you know, momentum behind it in the last couple of hours that I was looking at it. So if you're looking for a new audience, get that audience in with the means that they really know. I mean, you've got to learn the means to communicate to them. Ira Dubey recently said that I'm going to put up 10-minute plays because the attention span of the new age audience is 10 minutes. I laud that because she's taking something, she wants to promote theatre, but at the same time she's saying I'm going to try and make some adaptation for the audience and try and make it a little more contemporary. Now when you have a classical art, there's this issue of saying, do I want to preserve the purity, or as you said just now, do I want to dumb it down? I don't think it's about dumbing it down. Your audiences will always evolve and change. Can you, Shubhaji sings Abke Sawan and then sings a beautiful Thumri at the same time? So where do we find that midway?
Where do you find the midway?
Since so much importance is being given to duration, I'd like to remind everybody that in 1902, when the first 78 RPMs were recorded, classical music pieces were recorded for 3 minutes and 4 minutes. So it's over 100 years that we've already tried that, you know. I mean, whenever musicians have to adapt to a duration, they will adapt. So if you ask me to sing for 3 minutes, of course I will. Whether it's a Thumri or a Khayal, that's no big deal. I think the problem here right now is to find support for artistic and creative freedom. That means if today I want to sing an Abke Sawan, great, but if somebody doesn't want to, why should they be left out? Why should they be marginalized? Why should they be left to sort of wilt away and become frustrated people? And why should that be? Because they don't have the money to buy the space or the attention or the PR that is required to, I mean, that is being taken over.
Because they simply don't have the money. Let me get Shyam Benegal to respond to that. Because they don't have the money, Shyam Benegal, which is why the space for classical music is shrinking and shrinking. As Shubhaji is saying, the freedom is being curtailed, even though the audiences want it.
This is the space for classical music and classical dance in India. That, of course, I agree, it is shrinking. But when was it large? You know, it's just large in our nostalgia. But when was it actually large? You had always a very tiny group of people who listened to it, who appreciated it. It had patrons, and those patrons kept those arts alive. Without those patrons, the art would have been dead a long time ago. And these were royal patrons, there were people from the nobility and so on and so forth. Where did these arts actually develop among the people? You know, it never did. So there was a separation between this. Now, that separation is disappearing, which to me is a good thing. It's not a bad thing. It's just that the people who practice the classical art should not fear innovation and development and look at the rest of the world and say, all right, there are probably elements there we can take something from, and not think that we are very exclusive people and there's no way we can make our work impure, you know.
Okay, are you saying you're an exclusive person, you can't make your work impure,
you know, Sagarika,
and therefore you can't reach out to new audiences?
I'm going to respond to this later about my being a performer and what kind of audience I'm looking for, but I'd like to respond to what the other gentleman said before Mr. Benegal. He criticized Delhi Arts Festival. He said he couldn't find it on whatever he googled or whatever, you know, Twitter and all that.
Why aren't you on Twitter and Facebook?
Arts only.
You know, this is not about Twitter or Facebook. It is
but
not
why
about,
not?
But
why do you not want to promote yourself on Twitter and Facebook?
You know, I'm trying to
Why are we talking only about performing arts?
I'm trying to get
we'll come to you in a minute, Jatin Das.
I'm trying to get the multiple arts of the world to India. I'm trying to create a platform in India where India meets the world through the world of arts. We've got 28 countries performing in the Delhi Arts Festival this year. Sagarika, the difference between me and the gentleman, the event management person that you have on your panel, is that I'm not commerce driven. I don't look for money first before I do my programming for the Delhi Arts Festival.
Sponsor.
But obviously,
that's why you don't have sponsors. And you're crying about not having a sponsor.
Obviously, the person over there looks for money first and then looks for programming.
95% of your sponsors are the government's kiss of death.
So what is your problem?
Where is the, you know, you have one commercial. No, I don't have any problem with that.
Yeah.
I'm saying you want to look for a new audience. You don't even want to go and find them on the platforms that they are, because it's not about Twitter.
We have a new audience.
You know, you're bringing new world arts to people who brought the new world to everybody. It's the internet. Why can't you really get those people? I mean, that's your audience as well. So if you want to
we have our auditorium.
I
don't think you realize
that. Judge for an artist.
The fact
I am not worried about, ma'am, I am not worried about the auditorium full of people. I'm saying, are you reaching out to more people?
I think we're trying to do that. In many ways.
You are trying to do that,
going to understand that because you don't understand the arts the way I understand the arts.
Okay, Jatin Das has been wanting to say something for a long time. Go ahead, Mr. Das, and then I'll get in Shubha.
No, I'm very angry because the whole discussion is geared up to Bollywood and performing arts and popular art. There are all kinds of art in every period of history. There's a place for popular art. There's a place for classical art and folk and tribal art.
But we are saying diversity. Let me get you to respond to what Shyam Benegal was saying. Just a minute, Jatin Das. You made that point that in fact there are diverse art forms that need to be taken into consideration. Let me just get you to respond to what Shyam Benegal is saying. That our classical artists, classical exponents, traditional exponents simply not innovating enough. I mean, look at the way the Western, say the ballet tradition or the opera tradition has adapted to the needs of, say, a new audience or the needs of the young. For example, the Commonwealth Games opening ceremony, which a lot of people really went gaga about, was in fact where the traditional arts were used for a very modern, high-tech ceremony. You were the convener for that. So it can be done. Tradition with a modern rethink.
Absolutely. And I think every single artist experiments for himself or herself. Whether or not that experiment or whether that borrowing from different cultures and systems, whether that impacts other people or not is a different matter. But there is no artist who does not experiment for himself or herself. So nobody is hung up and saying that, I want to live in the 16th century or the 17th century. This is not happening. And I think let's understand that there are, certain issues which impact the performance of, let's say, traditional arts. Very often you go to a performance and you find that sound is just appalling. They're wonderful listeners. It's a lovely vibe, but for example the presentation is not good enough. And even in the biggest festivals, I go to a Ashoka hotel today and there's a lovely little amphitheater and the moon is there and you're sitting and listening, and then you hear the valet parking yell out and say, so and so driver, so and so gaadi le aao. That is the kind of situation in which we are performing, and unfortunately the finesse and the kind of special attention to lights and sound, even that is an issue.
Even that, and that it's simply not there. So what then can be done, Shyam Benegal? How then are we going to keep this diversity alive?
Well, I think for one, popular media, particularly television, should give more space for the classical arts. You see, the problem is that the exclusivists want to say, we want to keep this purity. But if you look at it in history, nothing was pure. There was always a lot of taking and giving, and that is what requires to be done. It cannot be cocooned.
You cannot be cocooned. Roshan Abbas, is that something you agree with? That the cocooning should not be there. There shouldn't be the exclusivity. It should be a much more democratic process.
Absolutely. By which I have full respect for the convener of the entire show. My point is just that you have to move out of this little shell. There'll be lots and lots of challenges, but if you want to attract commercial sponsorship and not the sponsorship that's put aside saying I'll do something for the arts, you've got to think about it from a commercial proposition. Shubhaji rightly said you can experiment. Yes, every artist is allowed to experiment, but then you must find some routes which are a little more commercial, which is what Bollywood finds. If there are superstars there, who are the superstars here? Are you bringing them down? Are you publicizing them enough? Are you giving them enough space in the media? This battle cannot be fought saying, I won't fight it on the common battleground. I'll find my own little space. You have to come out where everyone else exists.
Are you being snobbish about the market? Are you being snobbish about the market? The fact is, why don't you go out and sell your festival and sell your stars and sell just in the same way that the Bollywood industry goes and sells itself and markets itself?
The problem here
why are you reluctant to do that?
So I don't think we are reluctant to do that at all. But the point here is that we are trying to create a serious arts festival.
On the lines of doesn't have to be that you don't encourage sponsors.
No, I know. What I'm trying to tell you is that simultaneously the activity of program coming and finding someone to support that program happens. A lot of times these things fall apart because the sponsors are attracted to only big names, and for them big names
but you have to create those big names.
No, those big names are film stars and they are cricketers and nobody else in
but
India.
You have Shubha Mudgal, you have Jatin Das. These are equally big names. You have yourself. You are all big names. So why don't you promote yourself?
I mean, what I'm trying to tell you is that this is pan art. I mean, our festival is pan art. We have visual arts also. Jatin Das is inaugurating a visual arts exhibition tomorrow, and we have cinema. Mr. Benegal was on. He attended our festival 2 years ago. We have everything. We have cinema also as part of the Delhi International Arts Festival, and we have popular films like Monsoon Wedding and Lucky OA also from tomorrow onwards. But so I'm not being judgmental about the arts, and I wish the gentleman over there was not judgmental about the arts, about serious arts either, and talk about sponsorships as coming to one and not to the other. And
he's saying you have yourself to blame for not getting sponsors. Is that what you're saying, Roshan Abbas?
No, I'm just trying and saying that listen, stop living inside this little cocoon and move out. There are many ways of doing this. We all respect what you're doing.
But why does he even presume that we're living in a cocoon is what I'm saying. I mean, because we brought... I mean,
because ma'am, you're crying out at one point saying you're not getting sponsorship. Your sponsorship has gone down over the years. This is your 5th year. I've read an article about a week back which says, listen, we're not getting sponsors. We started this entire discussion with saying we're not getting sponsors. Well, you won't get sponsors if you're just going to stay and say this is only serious. The audience wants you out there. That's what I keep saying. Shubhaji for me is a great example of this.
Let me put it to you. Why not really radical rethink of the tradition? Some kind of exciting, original rethink that captures young people. Because let's face it, at the moment you do have to go out there and...
To defeat the sponsorship and PR. That's very wrong premise. That's very wrong premise. Hello?
No, but Jatin Das, what's wrong with sponsorship and PR? What's wrong with sponsorship and PR?
No, nothing wrong.
Why will you shun it as
you're mixing up two issues. No, sorry, listen. You're mixing up two issues. Artists have to do their job and impresarios have to find sponsorship. Galleries, publishers, impresarios have to find it. Artists don't find sponsorship.
Okay, is that the problem?
It's a wrong attitude.
There are no impresarios. There are no impresarios in the classical field. There are few impresarios in the classical field, or that kind of radical rethink within the classical field is not happening. With the young people would say be excited about, say, a production of the Mahabharata done in a modern, completely modern way.
It is not the job of artists.
That's what I'm trying to tell you. There's a new audience out there which is coming to the festival.
You don't have to transform and adapt in order to get young people.
Everything is happening simultaneously. There is fusion, there is classical, there is traditional, there's everything. Visual arts and cinema.
Is that adaptation not happening?
Jatin Das just said that you need, I'm sorry, Jatinji just said that you need to have an impresario separate from an artist. Is the convener of the festival an impresario or an artist? I feel bad for her because I know she's trying to do both things.
Right, you can't be an impresario and artist at the same time. But let me bring you in.
They will go out, they will sell it.
Sell my paintings ever, myself.
But you're having to do both,
completely out of time. Shubha Mudgal, let me just get you in here.
Artists as curators of the festival, let's not call her an impresario, but as a curator.
But what's wrong with bringing impresario?
No, not a problem at all, but I think we should have had your marketing people in here, and we should have asked them that, okay, we are going to do these 3-minute classical performances or folk performances.
Yeah, but why not? That may actually open up huge new audiences, and it has been done.
Let's try it. Sure.
Let's try it. Shyam Benegal, last word. How can these diversities be kept alive in our Bollywood-dominated culture?
It has to be both ways like this, and then it will definitely flower. Now look at look at classical traditions of Europe or the West. Now you have people on one side. You have the great ballet traditions of Europe, which again are just 200-250 years old at the most, and then everybody says that, well, that is very pure and so on and so forth. Then on the other hand, you have so much wonderful work that has emerged from the ballet. Now if you looked at somebody like Pina Bausch's work, it is so radical but so extraordinary because it's also equally creative. That is what it requires. I mean, we need original thinking on all
the same platforms.
We cannot just sit there and say, oh, we are the custodians of this great art, and sorry, we cannot listen to you folks because you will only sully this whole, this pure art, and we are at this altar, great spiritual altar, etc. I mean, I don't really buy into that kind of art.
There's nothing like pure art. There is art or no art.
Okay,
There's nothing like pure art. There is art or no art.
Right. So in fact,
artists to go to PR.
Right, we're completely out of time, unfortunately. Shyam Benegal saying the classical exponents, the traditional exponents must adapt with the times and move into the modern age. Otherwise, they will in fact face a dwindling audience. Roshan Abbas saying you need impresarios. Jatin Das saying that in fact, commerce has taken over, and Shubha and Pratibha saying that there is that kind of experimentation going on.
And
the young are coming.
And there is a new audience.
There is an audience. Don't blame the artists. No. Don't blame the artists. Blame in fact.
Artists worth the salt, experiments and evolve.
Yes. Right. Unfortunately, we're completely out of time. We need at least 1 hour to do justice to this topic. But thank you very much indeed, Jatin Das,
about performing arts and
Roshan Abbas, Shyam Benegal, Shubha Mudgal, Pratibha Palla. Thanks very much indeed for joining us. Can the traditional arts compete against Bollywood in this kind of culture we have? Are they being devalued? 57 are saying yes. Thanks for watching.